Hello and welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of days ago, someone commented on my Primary Arms PLXC first focal plane video how they had swapped out the original 2032 battery that came with the scope for a brand new lithium 2032 battery. Now, many of you might be saying that, well, almost all coin batteries are some sort of lithium. And that is true. Most of them are. But are they all made the same? So that guy's comment got me questioning. Are all 2032s the same? And if not, are there going to be any tangible differences that we can notice with illumination on any of the scopes behind me? So to answer that question, I have a plethora of 2032 batteries in front of me, a digital multimeter, and a few hours tonight to kill to find out if this holds any water. To have me help you, I'm devised this sheet. On the top left, we have a brand new Energizer lithium. Beneath that, we have a brand new no-name lithium. Beneath that, we have the UPG lithium. These both came with scopes that I had bought over the years. Don't know the age on them exactly, but we're going to see what their voltages look like. Next to that, we have a brand new Duracell, which I bought from Sam's Club. They're big blister pack. They're fairly inexpensive, so it's very convenient for me. Next to that, we have a Japanese-made Maxwell, and next to that, an Indonesian-made Panasonic, which is very slightly used because I pulled that out of one of my scopes. So this is a pretty decent array of CR2032 batteries that I felt should give us a good understanding of what's what. What I'm going to do now is leave my multimeter off to the side. You should be able to read that pretty good over there. And we're going to test all of these battery voltages and write them down so we can see if that directly correlates with what our findings are. Now, this does go to the thousands placehold, so I might as well go out there as well. 2.723 volts for the Panasonic, 3.153 volts for the Maxwell, 3.295 volts for the Duracell. As near as makes no difference, exactly 3 volts for the UPG. Our best yet at 3.305 volts for the no-name lithium, and 3.284 volts for the Energizer. So there you have it, all of our voltages across all of our batteries. There's actually a fairly large spread, as low as 2.7, but again, that was the used one that I knew about. So if we exclude that, we go as low as exactly 3 volts to as high as 3.3 volts. That's a 10% difference, and that's pretty significant. But if we cut out the low and the high, then our spread is a little bit less, but not ultimately that much. I'm already showcasing what I'm going to probably do all these testings on. So without further ado, I figured I'll test a pistol dot. This is a lead and steel Pandora 3 PB3. Pretty damn good pistol dot, gotta say. Very bright illumination on that. And because I have the PLXC in first focal plane, I figured this would be the best way to test out to see if any of these batteries do in fact have any sort of changes on weak illumination like this. And I needed something with a really bright dot to also test illumination and see if it's going to change. And why not roll in the wonderful P4XI? So these are the 3 optics that I have chosen simply because one's a pistol dot, one's really weak, and one's really strong. And that's basically it. So now I'm going to mount all these up and swap out all of these batteries individually and see if we can notice anything in some side-by-sides. I'm going to start this segment by going with the most used battery to the least used battery. And the first one's going to be the Panasonic. Keep in mind this came in at 2.723 volts, and it was the weakest right off the bat. From here, we're going to check out the Maxwell, but take a look real quick at how all 3 of these optics look. The P4 still looks pretty good. The PLXC looks all right, and the PB3 looks fantastic, all things considered. However, swapping them out with the slightly fresher Maxwell yields a much more impressive result across all 3 of them. This battery measured at 3.153 volts or 0.4 volts over the Panasonic. So it should be no surprise that it's much brighter than what the Panasonic was able to do. From there, we're going to check out the Duracell, which was brand new in the package and came in at 3.295 volts, or just over 0.14 volts over the Maxwell, and it does look like it is a little bit brighter. Moving on continuously, we're going to have the UPG lithium, which came in at 3 volts dead on, and it is definitely dimmer than the other 2 that we just looked at. From here, we're going to check out the no-name brand, which came in at the highest voltage out of the box, which was 3.305, but yet it doesn't look all that bright. In fact,
rather disappointing. Last up is going to be the Energizer, which came in at 3.284 volts, and you can see that is much brighter than the no-name brand lithium. So, how do all of these stack up against one another? Let's take a look. Putting these side by side, we're going to start on the top left going down, and then the top right going down as far as most bright to least bright. Most notably is going to be the PLXC. It is very apparent when one battery performs better in that optic than another, followed quite closely by the P4XI and then the PB3. The PB3 really doesn't seem too affected by overall brightness capacity depending on battery type until you get into the Panasonic, which is well below 3 volts. However, it is still, as near as makes no difference, as bright as the rest of the options, with the exception of maybe the 3 on the left. Anyway, as far as what we can derive from this, the Duracell and the Energizer are our top 2 performing batteries, clearly. They're so indistinguishable as far as the brightness goes that it really doesn't play that much of a difference between which one of these you buy. And it makes sense. They're both brand new, and they're both 3.284 volts and 3.295 volts. So as near as makes no difference, the exact same voltage. The Maxwell was very lightly used, but came in just under that voltage at 3.153, followed fairly far behind by the UPG, which came in at 3 volts, then the No Name, which came in, keep in mind, at 3.3 volts, the highest, and then the nearly dead Panasonic. So, to be brutally honest, these are very predictable results, with the exception of the No Name battery, because that had the highest voltage, but yet performs second from last. It is a little perplexing.
So pretty interesting results from the optics standpoint. The PLXC definitely showed the biggest difference between all these batteries. The P4XI and the PB3 were a little bit harder for me to pick up, but you've already seen a much better viewpoint than I have, and we've already discussed that. One thing I want to check right now is what these batteries are now that we've used them in 3 different scopes for some period of time. Don't mind my Hello Kitty pen. So, interesting result. The Energizer lost quite a significant amount of voltage. 2.25 volts. The No Name Lithium lost a little bit less at 194, but still a loss. The UPG at 2.975 volts, very little. The Duracell also lost quite a significant amount at 3.140 volts. The Maxwell as well also dropped considerably from where it started. And the used Panasonic really didn't lose that much at all, which makes me wonder that if this is more or less what a good operating voltage is for some of these 2032 batteries. All of them are actually a little bit closer to what their intended voltage is, which is 3 volts. I also realized that I should have written those numbers in a pen that you could have actually seen them a little bit easier. But I'm not done with testing yet. Oh no, I figured there's one other test that I could do that would really be interesting to see what the results are, and that is going to be a short torture test. I'm going to throw all of these batteries inside the P4XI for 5 minutes at maximum intensity and see what these voltages read at after 5 minutes fresh out of the scope. So enjoy this time lapse of me killing some batteries.
I'm going to do the exact same sequence of batteries that I did for the previous segment. However, after the 5 minutes, I'm going to pull them out, record their voltage, and write it down. So you will notice that number at the very bottom line under all of these batteries. With all that being said, the Panasonic is the first to go in, and it does look pretty good, and even after 5 minutes of continuous runtime, it doesn't look like it lost that much brightness. The same can be said for the Maxwell. Leaving it there for 5 minutes straight, it really didn't seem to lose that much brightness at all. The Duracell was next up, and again, it started out really strong, and it ended quite strong. 5 minutes straight at maximum illumination, I thought would play a little bit more of a challenge for these batteries, but even the UPG, it worked perfectly fine and really didn't show that much of a drop off. As far as the No Name brand one, again, it handled itself fairly well, all things considered. And, well, it should be no surprise to anybody that so far one of the best performing batteries still continues to perform, well, the best. We'll touch on what the voltages read on all of these batteries and what the losses were. Starting at the Panasonic, you could see it came in at 2.4 volts after the 5-minute run. The Maxwell came in at 2.747, the Duracell at 2.85, the UPG at 2.790, the No Name at 2.8, and lastly the Energizer at 2.76. So they all took a massive power drain hit. They might not look that dissimilar brightness-wise one at a time, but stacked close together, you can see that there is some differences here. Starting at the top left and going across the top and then going down from the bottom left to the bottom right, that is going to be our sequence from brightest to dimmest, or at least to my eye. In first is going to be the Energizer. Again, a very solid performance. This time, though, it's basically a toss-up between the No Name brand and the Duracell. I think I might give it to the No Name just a little bit. It looks a little bit more intense at the center, but the Duracell is as near as makes no difference right there along with it. The Maxwell is a very slight little bit darker, but so is the UPG. Those two are, again, too close to call. But the Panasonic is lagging behind by a significant amount. Yes, that segment of video was blurry, so maybe that has something to do with it. But overall, you can see that there are significant differences to the brightness from brightest to dimmest in this little test.
Well, would you look at that? There is a significant voltage droppage on all of these batteries when we've been running them for 5 minutes at maximum power on a very bright illuminated scope. But I'm not done with the test just yet. All of these batteries have been sitting for a few minutes. I'm going to eventually check the voltage again. But first, I'm going to throw these all in the freezer for 5 minutes because why the hell not? So let's go do that right now. Well, so much for leaving them in there for like 5 minutes. There's more like an hour or so. Anyway, we have some very cold batteries. I'm just going to pick these up as I find them. First up is the Maxell. It would help if the multimeter was on and in view. But the Maxell is reading basically 2.89. So, did come up a bit. Next will be the Energizer, 2.79 as well. Followed by the Duracell. Followed by the UPG. Followed by the No Name brand. And last but not least, the used Panasonic. So what can we take away from this? Well, the numbers are basically all over the place. The Energizer started out one of the highest, dropped down significantly 0.25 of a volt after light usage, went all the way down to basically half a volt less than when we started out after we ran it for 5 minutes, and then after the freezer, it only came up ever so slightly. The No Name brand lithium had a fairly similar fall from grace, but the numbers seemed a little bit more stable, which is quite odd. The same thing with the UPG, very minimal loss, fairly decent drop, but then it also rebounded quite high. The Duracell did pretty good, I'd say probably a little bit better than average. The Maxell also did pretty good. It dropped a fair amount with the original initial testing, a fair amount after 5 minutes of use, but it rebounded pretty high. But the most impressive, in my opinion, is actually the used Panasonic because it barely lost anything after light usage. It came down pretty considerably after 5 minutes, but a lot of them did. But then it came back up to basically where it was when we started. This is the only battery to really do that. And I wonder if it's just because it was already slightly used. I wonder if all of these got used to the point where this one has, if all those numbers would sort of stabilize. Good morning. It's very clearly the next day. Last night, a little bit after midnight, I was wrapping up my final video and the video ended up getting errored out. So here I am the next day. What are the takeaways? Some of these batteries perform way better than others, but what it ultimately comes down to is if you have a name brand battery, especially one that's fresh, they're going to perform very similarly to one another. All of them had pretty consistent results from what I was expecting, with the exception of the no-name brand one that had the highest voltage, but also performed the worst in the PLXC. But in the P4XI, it was really close to some of the other top contenders. The PB3, everything looked almost exactly the same, and it makes me wonder if pistol dots are maybe a little bit less sensitive to overall voltage differences between these batteries. You very clearly saw that there was a major difference in the PLXC, but with the P4XI, even after its 5-minute long torture tests, all of these batteries performed very similarly with the initial brightness when we first put the batteries in, and then their final brightness when I pulled the batteries out, but yet all of the voltages were all over the place. Again, it makes me wonder how long these batteries would really last in something like that at maximum brightness. Now, the last thing for me to touch on is people have recommended in the past running a 2016 battery as opposed to a 2032 battery. A 2016 battery is the same diameter, but half the thickness. So you could run 2 of them in series in a compartment that takes a 2032. What that effectively does is take your 3-volt battery and turn it into a 6-volt battery. Now, yes, doubling the voltage of something like that will increase the overall brightness capacity of that illumination. However, I don't recommend it, nor have I tried it, simply because if I blow out the illumination in one of these scopes and then I now have to send it in to get warranty to fix it, what are they going to say if they found out that I put too much voltage through it? Are they going to say, well, you're SOL, you have to go buy a new one? That is something I don't want to find out, at least not on one of these scopes. Maybe if I come across something that's really inexpensive and I just want to say, screw it, and test something out, maybe I'll try it then. But until then, I'm not going to do it, nor do I recommend other people doing it, again, for the exact same reasons. There are also some other tests that I could have done. I could have heat tested these, I could have cycled them, I could have let them run for an hour, but I figure this video is already long enough and it has more than enough useful information for you guys to understand that buying a good battery is a must, as well as keeping a couple spares in your backpack just in case. Anyway, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching this review. I really appreciate it as always. And as always, I'll see you again next time.
And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.